Welcome to Potter Revisited, episode 95. I'm Tori.
And I'm Shay.
Today we are covering chapter 35 of Goblet of Fire, Veritaserum.
Or, as we like to call it, daddy issues.
I am 99% sure we have an episode called Daddy Issues, so I will have to look into that.
It's not my fault this book is so full of daddy issues. That's not on me.
This is editing Tori here, and as I thought while we were recording this, we do have an episode titled Daddy Issues. It is episode 58, which we covered in Prisoner of Azkaban, Hermione's Secret. So we are going to call this episode even more Daddy Issues.
So Veritaserum comes from the Latin word veritas, which means truth. And I really do like that the author used the Latin names in a lot of spells and potions. I think it's a good touch. It sort of grounds the magic elements in real history and makes it feel a lot more realistic.
So just touching off where we left off at the last chapter with Harry coming back to Hogwarts, out of the maze. He's been through the graveyard, Cedric's dead, and it's just crazy to think about how much Harry has been through in these last few hours, because it has to only be a few hours since he just went into the maze and he's thinking, I'm in a tournament, and he's just trying to win a tournament, and everything went crazy, and he's not the same person he was a few hours ago. His innocence has been lost all over again. He's watched someone die. He's watched the guy that murdered his parents come back to life. He had to fight for his life, and now he is back at Hogwarts, and he's not the same.
Trauma. It's all trauma. I honestly can't think of anything more stressful than this moment when Harry and Cedric's body reemerge at the Triwizard Tournament.
Yes.
Like, you're horrified by the recent trauma. You're clutching the body of your dead friend, and you're now thrown into the center of a huge crowd of observers who have no context for what you just went through and are not listening to you. Like, he's trying to say, like, Voldemort's back, Cedric's dead. Did I mention Voldemort's back? Trauma. And everyone's just like, oh, tournament. Oh, look, it's Harry. Ooh, sports.
Yeah, because when he comes, he just kind of lies face down and not moving, because he doesn't even really process, like, what he has witnessed.
Exactly. He's just trying to pause time.
And so he's just like, I'm here at Hogwarts, and it's Dumbledore that kind of roughly, like, make sure he's alive, first of all, and it's great. Okay, Voldemort's back. His mind's still swimming. Meanwhile, Fudge is there being like, oh my god, like, what are we gonna do? The tournament. I just imagine the chaos. We kind of see this in the film a bit, where Harry and Cedric come back, and it's kind of exciting because everyone just figures, oh, they both won the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And Harry's just kind of very traumatized, and it's not till later on that people realize Cedric is dead.
Yeah. Harry honestly probably sounded pretty crazy saying Cedric wanted his body brought back, because dead people usually don't say things after, dying, with ghosts sort of being the exception. So he's like, he wanted his body brought back. I'm sure Dumbledore was like, yeah, okay, Harry, sure he did. Absolutely.
Dumbledore's kind of put in a rock and a hard place, because obviously his main goal in life is guiding Harry through the things he needs to guide him through to defeat Voldemort. But also he is the headmaster of a school in the midst of, like, a foreign exchange student-wide trip thing with foreign dignitaries there, and he has the Minister of Magic being like, oh my god, this kid's dead, what are we gonna do, what are we gonna say? Also, this dead kid's father is coming over here, we need to tell him before he sees the body. And then Dumbledore meanwhile is like, I need to talk to Harry about all the stuff that happened.
I feel like he needs to magic a little tent up around Cedric's body, and then, like, just have one person go in with Amos, so there's some sense of, like, privacy when he discusses it and sees what happened. Because, like, doing that all publicly in front of all those people, like, I think
yes,
he needs to, like, magic up a quick tent that's quiet inside, because I feel like it's got to be so horrifying to discover something about your son or someone you love, in a huge crowd of people also discovering it. Like, it seems like it should be a quiet, intimate moment.
It's also, like, a lot for all the students as well, as they're there to see kind of like an event. They're not there to witness someone they know die. But in the midst of all this chaos, Cedric being dead, the tournament kind of ending, everyone kind of freaking out, Amos coming over, Fudge freaking out, Harry is pulled away by Mad-Eye Moody, even though Dumbledore tells him he wants him to stay. And it's interesting because when Harry mentions Voldemort being back, Moody says the Dark Lord has returned. And we know that most of the Death Eaters refer to Voldemort as the Dark Lord. So it's kind of a little tidbit of leading into what gets revealed a little bit later. But Harry is being really vulnerable with fake Moody right now. He takes him to his office and he's asking him all these questions about what happened. And Harry hasn't really even fully processed what he has witnessed. And he's talking about Cedric dying, dueling Voldemort, seeing these ghostly imitations of his parents.
Yeah.
It's a lot to, like, he hasn't fully, like, emotionally processed what he's seen, and he's just in a daze. He's also injured.
Yeah, and you can tell Moody's not behaving the way an actual good adult would in the situation, because he's not letting Harry talk about what he needs to say.
Yes.
Not comforting Harry. He's just asking his own personal questions.
Yeah, and he's pushing Harry about things that he's not really ready to talk about. Like, he's pushing him about the Death Eaters and Voldemort itself, and Harry's just kind of like, he's still, like, his mind's going like miles a minute. He's probably not even processed that he's safe right now. I mean, he isn't really safe right now.
Yeah, from the perspective of, like, an aura, I could see there's some questions he would ask. Like, to me, it's like, Voldemort has a body. I would confirm that. I would say, how many Death Eaters did you see? Did you get any names? Like, to me, that's like, okay, you were an eyewitness to a crime. Give me the details we need to, like, follow up on the crime and then be comforting, if anything. But he wasn't asking those questions. He wasn't asking the, I need details to catch bad guys questions. He was asking weirdly personal type questions about, like, the energy, the atmosphere.
Yeah, the biggest thing is that Moody asks Harry how Voldemort treated the Death Eaters.
Yeah.
Bit odd.
When I first read that, I thought it was weird, because I was like, it's not like Voldemort's going to be mad at Barty Crouch Jr., because Barty Crouch Jr. went to prison, admitted he supported Voldemort, said he supported Voldemort, and then as soon as he came out, started helping Voldemort again. But a few minutes later, we realized that Crouch is actually just mad that some of the less loyal Death Eaters are just going to be forgiven and letting off. Like, he wants them to suffer Voldemort's fury. And then he comes back to the line he said to Harry earlier in the book, which is, one thing I hate more than anything is a Death Eater who walked free. And I think that's a very clever line, because the first time you read it, you see no interpretation of it other than being a good guy who hates criminals. And only now, with all this context, do you even begin to consider the second meaning, which is there's another reason you would hate Voldemort's followers walking free, and it's that they show disloyalty.
Yes, we've talked so much about just how well crafted I think this fake Moody was, with the way he says things that can be taken two different ways. So this big reveal, obviously, is that fake Moody reveals that he put Harry's name in the Goblet of Fire. And Harry, of course, is shocked. And I, as a reader, was shocked. I remember reading this as a 10-year-old and being completely shocked, because they spend most of the book making you want to trust this Moody. And we don't know that he is an imposter yet, so we just assume that Moody was bad the whole time.
They did a reverse Snape, where they're like, we're going to make him seem super cool and chill, and then flip it, as opposed to we're going to make him seem super guilty and then flip it.
Yes.
But yeah, he's definitely not the most suspicious guy in town. That's for sure. It was a bit of a shock as a reader. I also wonder, because he says he got Harry into the competition by entering his name under a fourth school. And my question is, what school name do we think he put Harry under? Like, do we think he used an existing school?
Pig farts.
Do we think he used an existing real school, like, somewhere else in the world? Or do we think he maybe, like, invented one that's goofy and I love Voldemort, you know?
I wonder, would the cup, because the cup is like the impartial judge, so would the Goblet of Fire accept like a made-up school name? I feel like with the magic, it must know what schools are there.
Okay, but then my other question is, it's called the Tri-Wizard Cup and the Tri-Wizard Tournament. So how does the cup not realize that a fourth school is a little weird?
Yeah, I feel like this part wasn't really worked out that well, because I also feel like this is a big kind of like loophole that I feel like should have been looked over.
Like, it's a poorly made cup if it doesn't do its job.
Because what's to stop like an older student that wants to be chosen and they put their name under like another school because they just want to participate?
Yeah. I'm like, oh, I'll definitely be chosen. Yeah.
Because it feels like this is like a magical contract, so it feels like the cup should know everything and all the rules and stuff. It feels too much of a loophole, because they kind of like automatically trust the cup and everything it does, and whatever it does is right. And it's like, this is a huge loophole.
At some point in the history of the tournament, like maybe not this exact year, but then they would have known about that weak point. It just feels a little bit...
Yeah.
It's an over-trusting in objects. Like, they trust the Sorting Hat a lot, and I get that, and that's kind of fine-ish. But like this trust in objects surpassed their own moral judgments or their own ideas of what's safe or what's right, and they let the cup's decisions surpass that, and that felt weird to me, given how clearly full of like vulnerability it is.
Yeah.
So basically, Secret Not Really Moody is doing his bit of monologuing, and he's telling Harry how I got you into the tournament and I got you through the tournament and I gave you all that help so you would win. And like, sure, he helped Harry a bit, but with an exception of the maze where he just made sure nothing got in his way, he didn't really help Harry any more than, say, Fleur or Crumb got help from their profs. Plus, the graveyard was kind of really hard, so it sort of balances out that the maze was rigged for Harry. So it kind of feels like he won fair and square against everyone except maybe Cedric, who, as far as we know, didn't get any help. Like, maybe he got help from Sprout because she's the head of his house, but we don't know. But like he's kind of acting like you didn't deserve or earn any of this. I did it all for you. But it's like, I know he's a bad guy and he's monologuing about being a bad guy and stuff, but still how rude of him to like dismiss Harry's hard work and efforts. Like, yes, he mentioned, oh, this'll work, but Harry still had to learn to do the thing. He still had to practice the thing. He still had to do the thing efficiently. I'm like, how dare you minimize Harry's efforts? You jerk.
Yeah, he does talk about kind of how Harry's pride and also his empathy really kind of like almost fucks it up for him because Harry almost didn't do the second task.
Because he didn't ask Neville. And I think that's really interesting that that's the part where Crouch's plan fell apart. Because Crouch doesn't really know how Neville is perceived by his classmates. And based on Crouch's behavior, there's a good chance she's a bit of a sociopath, which would make sense that there's certain social cues he might struggle with. So in his mind, he didn't realize nobody would ask Neville for help because they just don't see Neville as someone who knows valuable things. He was just like, oh, Neville's another Gryffindor who talks to Harry. Harry will figure it out. But not understanding the social structure and like how people view Neville and how Neville views himself, he never imagined that they just wouldn't approach Neville about it, you know? So that's really interesting that like lack of understanding of humanity and social structures is what caused weakness in the plan, because that's also similarly what happens to Voldemort very often, where like friendships and love and those sort of underlying social bonds are his weakness because he can't plan for them because he doesn't understand them. And that's exactly what happens to Barty Crouch.
He makes a lot of assumptions. First of all, that Harry is someone that would talk about his issues. The only people he talks about his issues with are Ron and Hermione because he trusts them. But he doesn't share like any issues he's having generally with the greater Gryffindor house. And Neville is also someone that doesn't really talk about his hobbies. Like, he knows people aren't really interested in what he's interested in. So he's not going to be off the top at breakfast being like, hey, I heard about this plant that can make you have gills.
He doesn't know. He doesn't know that Harry's trying to figure out how to breathe underwater. No one told Neville that Harry's trying to breathe underwater. So, you know, that's just not a thing that Neville would know to share. And it's just so interesting to me that that's, again, one of the weaknesses of the Death Eaters in general, of the lack of understanding about that kind of stuff.
So I wonder if it's also a Slytherin trait where if you would consider all your options when trying to figure something out, and one of the options would be, I should ask my peers. Where I feel like Gryffindors, it's just kind of like, well, I'm going to do this thing.
They're not as systematic. I also think Harry has sort of succeeded in all of his endeavors so far by leaning on Ron and Hermione for the areas that he doesn't have strength in, and he succeeded everything. So as far as he's concerned, everything he can't do by himself, Hermione or Ron can do, so why would he need to outsource? Like, he's never failed at something when it's the three of them doing it before. So, like, he's never had to outsource. He wouldn't know that that's an option, really.
Harry didn't really have people to lean on growing up either, because he only really had himself in the Dursleys. And so meeting Ron and Hermione and, like, what they accomplished that first year they met them, those are really the only people that he feels, like, really supported by, maybe even subconsciously. He doesn't even think about that. But that's anything that's going on, he only ever really talks to Ron and Hermione about it.
Yeah.
Even he keeps some stuff from Hagrid sometimes, and he obviously trusts Hagrid, but like for big things, it's just like, I can only talk to Ron and Hermione about this. But obviously we get to the climax where Moody decides that, you know, he's going to be valued beyond reasonable doubt by Voldemort. Voldemort's going to love him if he takes care of Harry for him, and he says he's going to kill him. So he gets his wand out. And he obviously stopped before he can do this. But I was wondering, we know that Harry is a Horcrux, so would actually trying to kill him even work?
I think some part of something inside Harry would try and save him first, whether or not it's kind of like the locket where something emerges and it's like a vision of something scary, and then to try and convince him not to. But I think if it wasn't so dramatic, like it would just be Harry's need to try and save himself that represents protecting of the Horcrux. I think maybe he could have destroyed a piece of the Horcrux in Harry. Like, there's a chance that that's a thing that can be done. But I don't think it would kill Harry. It would have killed that piece of Horcrux.
Yeah.
I feel like in my mind, the Horcrux goes on the outside of the person or the snake. So in my mind, like, you cut through the Horcrux first and then you get to the person inside rather than the Horcrux being deeper in than the person themselves. If that makes sense.
It's just interesting because we always know that like the container is what protects the Horcrux. So I always saw the Horcrux being on the inside.
Yeah, I guess.
And Harry is like protecting the Horcrux, and the Horcrux wants to survive. So they have all like when you think about the locket, like how it tried to survive.
Yeah. I wonder if the Horcrux would like just help Harry to figure out a solution. Like suddenly he knows a spell he never knew before or he can Accio a wand from across the room without a wand in his hand already or something. Like maybe the Horcrux would do that, like give Harry a little extra skill to protect itself. When Barty Crouch Jr., aka Moody, is talking about what treatment he expects from Voldemort after he's rewarded for killing Harry Potter, he says specifically that Voldemort will see him as closer than a son. And oh man, Sigmund Freud would have a field day with all of Barty Crouch Jr.'s daddy issues. And honestly, Tom Riddle's too.
Yeah. Later on, he talks about how much in common him and Voldemort have. And one of the biggest things is about their fathers. So he has a lot of issues stemming from having Barty Crouch as a dad.
Yeah. And also, then he keeps referring to Voldemort and saying, the Dark Lord and I. And I just kept thinking, like, of inserting that musical number from Wicked, that's the Wizard and I, but the Dark Lord and I. Like, that's all I could think of. I was like, he's about to break out in song.
Yeah, honestly. I feel like he's kind of seeing Voldemort as like a replacement father figure in a way.
Yeah, an authority figure who he can look up to and be appreciated by and valued by. He wants everything he didn't get from his father from Voldemort. Which is unrealistic. Voldemort is not going to, like, he'll say good job and give him a pat on the head, but like
he's not paternal.
He's not gonna actually give him the emotional needs he has. Like, he's not gonna fulfill emotional needs for this guy.
He wants eternal service.
He's expendable. Everyone's expendable. Yeah.
But before anything can happen, Dumbledore bursts in with McGonagall and Snape, and he is mad. Like, Harry notes that how mad he looks.
Oh, he's pissed. He is pissed.
Yeah, he can see why Voldemort fears him.
Dumbledore knew it was actually a fraud Moody because Moody ignored Dumbledore's direct order about keeping Harry right there. And Dumbledore only associates with people who blindly follow his orders. So he's like, that's unusual. Gonna clock that as weird.
He's like, Moody would never do that.
Moody would never question something I told him to do.
But we find out what happened to real Moody, and he's been through it.
Oh man, he's been through it. Yeah, it's trauma. Also, it's really funny because Dumbledore's like, okay, we got to inform the necessary people. So he's like, all right, Snape, go to the hospital wing and get medical attention or whatever. And he's like, Minerva, go find the weird looking black dog and bring it up to my office. And it's the first time in my life I've ever really related to Albus Dumbledore, because I would also just request to hang out with cool dogs if I had that authority. I'd be like, yeah, bring the cool dog to my office. We're going to hang out.
Yeah, it's just very matter of fact where he's just like, bring that dog up to my office. Don't worry. He knows what's going on.
Okay, cool. Just dog stuff.
I do feel for Minnie because she just wants to get Harry to the hospital wing, and Dumbledore's like, nope, I need him here. He needs to be traumatized more. Or he needs to see some stuff, so I need him with me. But so Snape is down to the kitchens to get Winky and also the Veritaserum. So he comes back and we get the truth potion.
I find that the truth potion is a clever way to reveal all the details of the evil plot without just repeating the old cocky villain reveals his plan thing, because again, we already sort of had that with Voldemort earlier, so I'm glad that the author found a slightly altered way of doing it, so it's not the exact same thing.
Yeah, we had a lot of monologues.
Variety and not just repeating the same trope was nice.
Yeah, so we basically find out that there was a switcheroo that was done. So as a last wish to his late wife, Barty Crouch decided to have his wife and his son switch places as his wife was dying. So they took Polyjuice Potion and he left Azkaban with his son and then kept him under his control until he eventually broke through it. I was wondering this because he kind of also talks about how him and Wormtail apprehended Moody and how they had to keep him alive. And would taking the hair from someone that had died, would that not work for the Polyjuice Potion? Do they have to be alive?
I don't think so. I bet your hair can, like, there's differences in your hair when you die, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I would say. I think maybe also you'd have to get enough of it. Like I feel like you'd have to collect the hair before they die. Like you have to take the hair off of a live person, and then maybe if they die after, as long as you still have the hair, that's fine. But then you'd have to portion the right amount. And like we don't really know how long Moody's hair was. So like maybe there's a limit to how balding he was. Like there could be a limit to how much hair they actually have. So you have to keep them around and hope they grow some more.
Yes, because it was just like a bit unclear because Dumbledore kind of insisted, oh, they had to keep Moody alive because of this. And obviously he wanted to interrogate him to know how he would act, but it's like he needed to keep him alive for the potion. And I'm like, if he had enough hair, like I don't know how much hair Polyjuice Potion takes, but
I think we have enough hair between the two of us that someone could comfortably live our lives for a few years.
Yeah.
If they wanted to.
It just brings up a whole other thing where if you had a Polyjuice Potion, could you impersonate someone that had died recently for a while, depending on how much hair I guess you had.
Yeah, Bertha Jorkins. It's me, Bertha Jorkins, back from my trip to Albania.
Another couple tidbits that we find out, obviously, are they got Moody into the trunk. Poor Moody, because, he had this reputation of being paranoid. And obviously the one time he was actually, something did happen to him, no one really believed it or didn't take it seriously. They just sent Earth there. No one took it seriously because of Moody's reputation.
I love that we hear about that exact incident earlier on in the books. Oh, Moody, he's a bit crazy. He thought his dustbins were trying to attack him or something. Like, we heard about it earlier, and you just think it's so useless information. Now you're like, oh no, that was like an actual early onset foreshadow. That was actually a pretty serious event, and just he got gas. Everyone's so used to gaslighting Moody about threats. They're like,
it's not gonna like it now. And also we have poor Winky, who is like, this is like all the secrets that she's been keeping for the Crouches, and she's the one that really kind of like, encouraged,
did the legwork.
Crouch, yeah, to let his son have, nice treats for being good.
Yeah.
And obviously didn't work out.
She was his best advocate in trying to make sure his life was decent while being held in captive, and he used it against her to do evil. Poor Winky. And she's traumatized hearing him confess to these things. She's like, no, shh, it's a secret. Shut up.
Yeah, she feels like she let down Mr. Crouch, especially we find out how Mr. Crouch died. Obviously, Barty Crouch waited for him to show up at Hogwarts, then all of a sudden Harry and Victor just happened to be there. And so he waited, and then he's just like, yeah, I killed him. And then poor Winky's just like, ah!
What? Honestly, poor Winky.
Yeah, but we end the chapter kind of learning just kind of the backstory of Barty Crouch Jr., how he impersonated Moody and everything. But we wanted to talk a bit about the faux glass that is kind of a pivotal part of this chapter.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting magical artifacts that we hear about throughout the series, Mirror of Erised, whatever. But this faux glass is so interesting to me. So when Harry's first in the room with what he still thinks is Moody, Harry sees 3 foes in the glass, meaning there are 3 enemies of Crouch and therefore Voldemort approaching. And those 3 people are Dumbledore, McGonagall, and Snape. And this is kind of a confirmation, maybe, at least before knowing that the Dark Lord has returned, Snape is a good guy because he's an enemy to Barty Crouch Jr., who is a bad guy. I mean, we don't really know how the faux glass works or how it determines who is an enemy. So it could just be who the owner perceives as an enemy.
Yeah.
Or it could be who sees the owner as an enemy. So like, if you see my owner as an enemy, I will show you to them as an enemy. So it could go that way as well. But like, it could also be that since Snape thinks it's Mad-Eye Moody in that moment, and he doesn't see Mad-Eye Moody as an enemy, the mirror doesn't show Snape. Or that Snape is just super duper sneaky and he can convince a magic artifact. But then later, when Snape knows that it's actually Barty Crouch Jr., who is a Death Eater, it still shows Snape in the faux glass. Like, it intentionally, we get a description of faux glass, Snape's in it. We find out the reality of who Barty Crouch Jr. really is, and then we see the faux glass again, and Snape is still in it. So, like, it's not perfectly clear, but I think it's a pretty stable foreshadow of Snape's true allegiance. And it's pretty interesting because, to me, what side Snape is on is one of the big questions throughout the series. And it's pretty interesting that we get basically an answer to where his allegiance lies after, like, this early in the series. There's only 3 books left.
Yeah, it's something that is really toyed with throughout the series of, like, can we really trust Snape? We don't know why Dumbledore trusts him. And there's little moments that kind of, like, or, like, maybe try and, like, hide what his allegiance is, because that's like the biggest question, I think.
And it's funny because, like, if they had just shown him before he found out the reality of it being Barty Crouch Jr. and a Death Eater plot, it would have still been up in the air because, again, in that moment he thought it was Moody, and we don't know how the glass works. So it could have still been not a full-on answer. But because they mention him specifically twice, I think it's a reveal that people don't think about enough. Like, I think it's kind of a huge moment if you're following that storyline closely. Where does Snape stand and what's he up to? I think that's probably, besides the final reveal in book 7, that's as close as we get to knowing the honest to goodness truth about where Severus Snape stands.
And that's kind of the chapter for now, as we kind of learn this big thing where we thought Moody was bad, but actually he was an imposter this whole time.
Moody's a good guy. He's just stuck in a box.
But do you have any other final remarks before we wrap up?
I mean, just Freud would have a field day with the amount of present daddy issues in the series as a whole. Like, daddy issues are like something everybody seems to have in common. Like, Terry's got issues, especially when he realizes he's trying to be his father when he thinks he's perfect, and then facing the reality that his father wasn't perfect, and constantly, trying to find substitute father figures everywhere he looks is kind of a key thing throughout the series for Harry. Obviously, Voldemort has dad issues because his dad was a muggle who hated magic people, and then he killed him.
Yeah.
Dumbledore has daddy issues, but we don't really get into those. Bit of daddy issues in there. Obviously, Barty Crouch Jr., Draco Malfoy. Ron doesn't get enough love because his father has to divide it 8 ways or whatever, 7 ways, 8 ways. Molly gets love too. Issues. They've all got a lot of issues.
Yeah, but that's it for us for now. Thank you for listening to this episode, and we will be back to discuss chapter 36 of Goblet of Fire, The Parting of the Ways. This is the second last chapter in Goblet of Fire, so we'll be finishing up very soon. You can reach out to us on social media at Pottery Visited or email us at potteryvisitedpodcast@gmail.com, and we will see you next time.
Bye.